This episode of Beer with Nat is brought to you by me. Hey everyone, Nat here. I don't normally run ads on the podcast, but this season I've got my own shameless plug. I wrote a book. Available on March 19th in the UK and April 28th in the US, Beer, Taste the Evolution in 50 Styles is a taster's guide through the history of beer. To learn more and pre-order your copy, visit beerwithnat.com/book. Okay, time for the show. Welcome back to Beer with Nat. On every episode, I share a beer and a chat with people who do what they love for a living. They work in the beer industry. Today's guest is Jackie Moody-McNamara, coach, mentor, and consultant at Turn the Key. Jackie, quite literally, grew up in pubs, as both of her parents ran them when she was younger. She tells us how she progressed from pub relief manager to trainer to director of operations at Punch Taverns, overseeing an estate of 500 pubs. We talk about what she learned along the way and how that's informed her current role as a coach and mentor to other women who are advancing in their careers in hospitality. Then we go into some fascinating research that Jackie's undertaken on the 7 factors that are holding women back from the boardroom and the 7 opportunities. Finally, we discuss what Jackie enjoys most about being a part of the beer and pub industry. Here she is.
So I thought long and hard about what to gift you.
Thank you.
That you can enjoy later.
We are recording on a Monday afternoon, so we're not going to drink our beers, but Jackie has brought in 2 beers to share today. Lucky me that I will get to take home. So what are the 2 beers that you've brought and why these beers?
The reason I've got 2 is one is a bit about nostalgia and history, which is important to me. And the second one is a bit more about future.
Oh, I like that.
So they had different sort of reasons for resonating with me.
Yeah.
What I chose.
Okay, so our nostalgia beer is?
Guinness.
Yep, one of my favorites.
Oh, that's
And
good.
why is that special to you?
Well, my father was born in Dublin.
Ah, okay.
So I had uncles and aunties who worked at Guinness's, and I would spend 6 weeks of my summer holidays. Literally the day after I finished school, I'd fly to Dublin and return the day before. And latterly, I met my husband, who's both his parents are from Dublin.
Oh, wow.
So we spend lots of time in art, and it's his favourite tipple too.
Okay.
And that coupled with being in pubs for most of my life and growing up in pubs too. When I see Guinness or an advert for Guinness or it's St Patrick's Day or obviously Guinness comes out or the rugby,
Yep.
big sort of rugby watchers, it's just something very nostalgic for me really. So it's probably more from I don't drink a lot of Guinness personally, but it features a lot in my life.
Okay, so now we've got the future-looking beer as well, which is a beer I know. So tell me more about this beer.
So, I went to an event before Christmas that I was invited to from Lane Brewing Company. And I was specifically invited because of the work I do with women and around diversity and inclusion. And I was just blown away. I made the effort to go to the event, and some of my brilliant women, which we'll talk about,
Yep.
also came and joined us. And so it was really nice to support them with their new apprenticeship programme that they were launching. And they were working obviously with Megan Stone, who's an influencer from America, to come over and talk about her experiences as a woman in beer. So that was really fascinating. And to hear stories firsthand. So we had Farouk as well, who came from Portobello Brewing, and Jane also from the Mothership sort of brewery. So to hear firsthand their experiences, very diverse. For me, that was part of my future in terms around working with women and diversity.
Yeah, what does the industry look like?
And actually, we've really got to shake it up. You know, we go to the pub more often now with our family. And if I look back to the pub I grew up in, because I grew up in pubs, I probably wouldn't have wanted my children to be in those pubs. They were very wet-led, very male-dominated, smoking was allowed, and it hung in the air before we got extraction. Whereas the pubs of today and the brewing and the choice of products on the counter as a whole today are very different. So for me, it's a much more welcoming environment to bring a family into. So the All for One event, and so I thought I'd bring that along. It was quite interesting and it weaves in quite nicely to hopefully some of the rest of the dialogue.
Yeah, definitely. I have spoken to Megan on the podcast, and that was just before this event took place.
I feel very honoured.
Yes, so exactly, carrying on this idea of diversity. So let's talk about the amazing work that you do, which then has to do with diversity and inclusion in beer. So you're a coach, mentor, and consultant at Turn the Key, which is your own business, and you specifically focus on supporting women in their advancement within hospitality. So tell me more about Turn the Key and what a typical workday might look like for you. And I know this is only one of the things that you do, so we'll get to the other aspects of your day-to-day as well.
Well, I set up Turn the Key in 2018 when I qualified to be a professional coach. So I decided to take my experience at executive level and in the hospitality trade, and particularly my specialism is operations. So when I have to be relaxed and calm, that's quite challenging because it's not my natural approach to work, really. But I decided I could be really valuable to people. And in my early career, although I started out in pubs, operationally running pubs, and as a relief manager in pubs in my sort of early days, I did spend a few years in the training department as well, also one of the businesses I worked in. Brilliant foundation for me to understand the wealth of training people to do things for themselves. So I kept threatening every time I changed job to work for myself, and then another job came up. And the security of a regular income, working for a big company because I love people, working with lots of people, I continued to follow that as opposed to maybe doing my own thing. And so it just felt like the right time in 2018. So I set up a very generic coaching practice, and I was coaching obviously men and women, mainly from my network, which is how most people start when they sort of set up their career. But very quickly I established that the biggest need in the market from a coaching perspective actually was for females. And without targeting them, I ended up with 85% of my clients were women.
Okay. And do you think that's because you're doing it as a female, that women perhaps feel a bit more comfortable working with you than a man might, or it just felt like these are the ones who need the most help to advance in their careers?
I think it was a bit of both. So initially I didn't think I'd work for myself, and I did seek to go and find another corporate role, and it was quite challenging. And you had high days and low days depending on how you felt, if you'd applied for a job and people were interested to speak to you or not, or just ignored your email. So that was quite a roller coaster, and I've had that a few times where I've sort of gone off and sought new roles, so I am used to it. But it can be quite lonely. So what I noticed then is I had time, and then I reached out to my network and realised there were quite a few other women looking for new opportunities, and the ones that were finding it most difficult were those who were already, if you like, displaced and had left their employment and then were looking to go somewhere else and find a new role. They seem to be finding it the most challenging once you'd stepped off
that career ladder.
And it didn't need to be for very long. But also I think because of when then I did speak to them, I really had empathy because I understood how they were feeling, and I understood some of the challenges they were facing. I didn't quite understand all of the challenges, so that's been a bit of an eye-opener for me. Because of my career progression it was very steady, and every 3 years I took another promotion, another role, and broadened my expertise. It was very stable for a long time. And because I'm very confident and came from a family of very confident females, I didn't recognise some of the challenges, so that got me even more interested. So I think it was both of the being a woman and also being at the end of trying to secure roles. So most of the women I worked with were either stepping up from a transition, so someone from an operations director to an MD, or they were seeking new roles, were the initial sort of cohort of ladies that I was working with.
And what does your day-to-day look like now? How much of it is spent on individual coaching or events like the one you're coming into London for today? I suppose no 2 days are the same.
No, it's probably easier to talk about a week than a day, actually, because if I'm working from home, which I probably do a couple of days a week, you realise when you run your own business development's quite important, and looking after your network and reaching out to people. So I probably do at least a couple of days at home each week, and also preparation if you've got courses, or reflecting. I do a lot of reflection these days, more than I ever did when I was an operator, considering the client and what's next for them or what could be helpful. So I might have time in the day where I go back and say, well, I'm prepping for another client meeting. So I prep before the client meeting and review my notes and think, I've put that down for a few weeks now. Now I read it, what's it telling me today? And you see different things. And then post, when I've had a coaching session, for example, I sit down and reflect on that individual.
How did it go?
How did it go? What did I notice about them, both sort of physically as well as verbally, sort of what they were sharing with me. And then I probably have, there's probably a day a week. I'm a bit like today. I'm out as an interview. I'm at Plan B mentoring this evening. Again next week I'm at the House of Commons next week, and then we've got Women in Hospitality, Travel and Leisure. So I'd say there's nearly a day a week on supporting the cause and the purpose, going to events and supporting other people. And probably a couple of days a week at least there I'm either delivering training or I'm coaching, or try and do a lot of that face to face. But more and more I'm using Zoom and other methods.
And other conferencing techniques.
So you haven't got the travel time.
Yeah.
And they're very helpful, but they are slightly different. So if I've got days I'm working from home, I may be doing a 1 hour coaching session, or I might just have someone who's prepping for an interview and I want to have a chat. Can I just talk this through with you? So that's probably what a week might generally look like.
Yeah. Wow. So it is very varied, but all working in the same towards the ultimate goal.
And I love that.
Yeah.
That really appeals to me.
Yeah.
The variety.
That's what keeps it interesting. Yeah. And are most of your coaching sessions one-on-one, or do you do some group work? How does that work?
Mostly one-on-one, but one of the programs I initiated last year was the boardroom program, which is for women who they may be getting ready for their next step up to executive level, so very experienced as a manager and entering into leadership, or they could have secured an executive role and they want to cement that role and cement their confidence about being a leader.
And make sure they know they belong to be at that table.
Securing their seat.
Yes,
and
I like
confidence in that seat is really important. And we do a lot of peer-to-peer work and support.
And is that your Brilliant Women boardroom initiative?
Boardroom
well, I was going to ask about that next, so that's perfect. So tell me a little bit more about the idea for that initiative and then how that one plays out. As you said, it's slightly different to your coaching.
Lots of things happen for a reason. In the moment they happen, you feel a bit hacked off. And
it's only until a few months later you can realise the opportunity, the silver lining.
I'll tell you the first time it happened to me, and then I'll link it to the boardroom programme and how it became what it is. And I'm just starting my next cohort in March actually, so I'm looking forward to that. When I was 21 and I'd been a relief manager for 3 years running very busy pubs in Birmingham, I grew margin, grew turnover, made the pubs more efficient. And that was on a relief manager. So I'd go in for 2 weeks. And work in the pubs.
I was going to ask, what did the relief mean?
So people went on
holiday. Was it the odd hours, or you were covering sort of the odd
holiday
shifts?
Cover. So I was based at my mum's pub and worked with her, and they couldn't get cover for her holiday. And the area manager, I was 18, said, "Well, could you run the pub, Jackie?" I went, "Yeah, my eyes shut. Of course I can." And my mum said, "Oh yeah, no problem, Jackie knows the full run of the pub." So she went on holiday and I ran the pub.
Wow.
And that opened up to me being a relief manager for 6 pubs in a very local area. And I got very mixed feedback from that, because unfortunately the women didn't like a young woman coming in to run their very successful business when they went on holiday. And the husbands didn't like it that I came in and gave better stock results in a 2-week period. And the pipes were cleaner and lots of things about the business were cleaner. But I did that. I learnt so much in 3 years doing that. And then decided I was ready to run my own pub, because frankly I was running a lot of pubs better.
Everybody else's, yeah.
Having gone on for 2 or 3 weeks to do it. And that was the first moment I had that, I don't like this is not fair or equitable. And I applied for my own pub. And it was a pub I'd ran on numerous occasions, and it was a food pub, lovely little village pub. And I was very successful at interview, but got told I wasn't successful because, and they were giving it to a couple, because I was on my own and I was too young.
Okay.
At 21. So highly capable, highly experienced, results orientated.
Yep, with plenty of proven track record of the work that you'd achieved.
And 2 parents behind me that were licensees, so I always felt I had a fallback, which was really helpful. If I needed advice or help, I could ring them and say, "Oh, this has happened. What do I do?"
Your parents have been in this world.
My parents were really good because they were both licensees for the same company.
Okay.
And I got told that I'm really sorry, but on this occasion you've been unsuccessful. And that really hacked me off. So I resigned.
Wow.
And I said, if I'm not good enough for you, please don't come and ask me to do your relief. I'm going to go off and do something else. And within a few weeks, the regional director had heard that I'd resigned. And 2 people from training turned up and said, "Oh, we've been sent here by Phil Strong." And I met Phil a few weeks ago at a BI event. So I'm very grateful to Phil. And they said, "We don't want to lose your skill in the company.
Wow.
Would you consider a role in training?" And I was in the kitchen with no makeup on, cooking, because we had no chef that day. And I was like, "I beg your pardon. Anyway, so that was a catalyst of when something to me felt wrong, and I knew I was highly capable. And I think because of the confidence I had around me of my family and I guess my own self-worth at that very early age, I had to do something because it was wrong. So I did go off and I secured a role in training, and that led to another 15 years of sort of progression.
Wow.
So I'll bring it to the boardroom, because what happened was I was asked to facilitate an advisory board day for a new advisory board. It was their first session together, and I was asked, could I go and help them facilitate the day? I said, well, absolutely, I love facilitation. I'd love to do that. So of course, when I got the list of the attendees, it was all male, and they were all businesses that were supporting the sector hospitality and not in competition with each other. So this group of people wanted to all work together to enhance their businesses and support each other within the sector. And my reflection after the day, because there were a few things that happened on the day that I thought, that's interesting. Would you say that to a man? And were a little bit sort of sexist that was said, unfortunately.
Specifically to you, as there were no other women in the room.
And they were not big things. I talked about great innovation with Amazon and the washing machine business. And the technology of being able to know the powder was low. And they'd let Amazon know, and they'd say, do you want to order more powder?
That was fantastic. The next box arrives at your door.
Brilliant. And the feedback from the room was, oh, well, we don't know where the washing machine is because we just leave our things on the floor type comments.
Wow.
And funny enough, actually, I've become quite hardened to that. So I never used to take a lot of notice when I was certainly an operator, because it would hold you back, because it would niggle you. But actually, it was the organiser of the event after was a bit embarrassed and said, I said, oh God, there was a few times, Jackie. I said, I'm glad you had that observation. I wasn't offended, I'll come back. But it's interesting that you've had that observation. Would you be interested in having women join this group? Because I've got some fabulous women who would add great value and not compete to this advisory board. And they thought about it and came back and said, oh no, we don't think we're ready. And that was my catalyst to say, do you know what? I don't need someone else to invite us, we'll create our own.
Wow.
So on that basis created the boardroom programme and invited a series of women who I felt could and should be around the board table to support, so the same premise, to support each other and develop and have a confidential area to talk about themselves and sort of their progression. And that's what happened. So again, now in reflection, I was very I'm probably more tempered in terms of my response that time. I've learnt with age and look at it as an opportunity. So if it wasn't for that opportunity, which I'm very grateful to go and facilitate, and that situation happening, I don't think the boardroom programme would have happened.
Wow. And how does it differ in terms of the peer-to-peer work? So it is more about the women who are already in senior roles lifting each other up to that next level.
It's about them lifting each other up. So, I mean, the great thing is we have 7 women with experience of successes and areas for improvement. And what I've found working with, and funny enough, the first boardroom programme, we have a guest spot. Someone comes in from a leadership, normally a board position, to talk.
Okay.
Very frank and openly. And the first speaker was a male speaker. And it was interesting to get feedback from him to say, oh, it's very different being in a group of all senior women. You were all quite serious in a nice way.
Yeah.
But very open, very, very open to share, and no ego in the room.
Yeah, and knowing then that what is said in that space is just to stay in that space.
And very open and vulnerable. So again, feedback from the women from the first day, and normally what happens, we have a day. We have one day each quarter, and then we do a 6-week accountability call in between. How are you getting on? Are you practicing your tools? Any successes you want to share with us? Any areas you'd like to improve? We normally have a reading subject. So we'll talk about the book we've read and what resonated for us in the book. And interestingly then, I normally get a flurry of phone calls after, because they've so enjoyed getting together and sharing what they enjoyed about the event. And what a few women recounted to me was, when you first meet as a group, particularly the first morning, because everybody knows each other, and there's a persona of the person that you're meeting. And a few women said, oh my, when we sat and got to know the individual better and heard their story or their career progression and what they've had to overcome, we couldn't believe it was the same person that we met that was very confident. So it's nearly like it's permission to talk and permission to be vulnerable and share. and then that shapes very much, I guess, how we behave and respond. But also then for protection, that security and vulnerability tightens slightly, I think, as then we leave that environment. And they often talk about putting different heads on. You know, it's a mom head, or it might be a work head, or just a home head.
Yeah, in the States we say different hats, but that same sort of thing.
Different hats, wearing sort of different hats. So it feels to me a privilege, which coaching is a privilege, to hear insights that are very confidential to people that they may never have shared to anybody else. But it's very uplifting. Yeah. So even I come away uplifted, and it's my job, so I think that's amazing. Yeah. And they all come away massively uplifted from that, confidence levels and sort of new things to try out. And
knowing there are others in the same boat.
And that's a really important point.
Yeah.
They're not on their own. Yeah. And often, and actually that's the same for men too. When you talk about imposter syndrome.
Of course.
And I think men naturally have, if they have spare time, they're willing to invest it in networking, or doing something sporty, or after work, going for a drink. Women are less likely to do that. So they'll prioritise maybe family things before that, and they see that as a luxury. But it's actually really important to have the confidence to go, it's okay to do that. If I want to have a career, it is part of, I need to get that balance right.
Yeah.
I need to do some of that if I want to progress.
Yeah, having that network, getting that support.
Having the network, but maybe doing it differently.
Yeah.
And having different networks that they enjoy. So
how did you become a coach? What does that training entail?
Well, when I first did some research, I did find there were people who were coaching who hadn't sat any formal qualification to do so. And that's not me. So values and ethics are really important to me, and they've driven decisions in my career, as I said, in my early days. So I just went off and did some, and I spoke to lots of different people who had attended different professional qualifications. So my choice was to go to Henley Business School.
Oh wow! Okay.
And get my diploma in coaching.
Okay.
From there, and I left school at 17, and I only stayed for the year because I had to be 17
before you could start
before I could do what I wanted to do, which was to join the army.
Oh my goodness, wow.
Now I sit here and say that now. So education for me, I did it and I loved school, but I preferred to work. And I preferred to earn a living, working at the pub, as I sort of grew up in the pub. That was much more attractive to me than turning up at school. So really so I didn't go off and do a degree, which most of my peers did, and they've done MBAs and sort of all of that. And I was enlightened going to Henley. I'd go the night before. I absolutely loved it. It's such a fabulous environment to learn, and people did say you'll love it. When you'll get the bug once you go there.
Yeah.
And I went there and sort of had 3 residential courses and worked with other like-minded individuals, which was fantastic. And came out and sort of then did my coaching training that you need to do so many hours.
Yeah.
And then all the sort of recordings of you, which is a bit scary, of your practice. And then so I sort of got my certification for that then sort of last year.
Congratulations.
And I never looked back. So I got a certificate in my office.
Perfect. You're official. It says
it was framed. I got a special frame at Christmas from the family to put it in.
Oh,
in my
lovely.
office, because I don't have too many of them. Apart from all the years I've gained sort of in the sector really. So I made the decision to professionalise, and I'm very glad that I did, because there's a massive skill in coaching.
And can you talk about that? What does it take to coach well? What are some of those skills? Is it listening, communication, learning to speak a bit softer and maybe remove yourself from the conversation as much?
There's lots of different types of coaching, and I think you have to find your own. And I think rather than steering it to the client, you have to find your best tools and techniques that you're most natural at, that works with your skill set.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that was really helpful, and really just understanding the difference, because people, I called myself an accidental coach when I realised what coaching was, because I sort of did some of it through my training background, but often it was some of the finer points, and even the contracting on confidentiality is massively important. So rapport and trust very early is very important. And of course, to coach, you don't have to know the specialist area. You can coach anybody from any sector, because it's a facilitated learning. And my belief is, and that coaching is, the coachee has the answers. Your job is to
just help
facilitate
get them
and draw it out, which is much more transformational for them, and much more anchored for them to learn and be able to reproduce the skills that they're sort of learning. So that's important. But I would say of the listening is probably the biggest thing that you do of time, is listen, and be non-judgmental, very important. And be able to block off your own thinkings, your own values, and not allow them to infringe on the conversations, to allow people to be very open, to be able to share their values, and follow their path and not your path that you've experienced. So I'd just like to advise you. So funny, last week I had a Brilliant Women's Circle event, which is another bit peer-to-peer group that I run locally, and that was the first thing I did, was to initiate to see if there was interest there. And we did some coaching practice. So a bit of a light level, just to introduce them to coaching and how they can complement leadership with it. And the biggest feedback was, oh my God, the listening. I want to give advice.
Yeah.
But they did it. They were fantastic, the women that just sat and listened. And I always remember one of my first feedback sessions on being observed as a coach. And I just remember them saying, your standout moment was your listening. It was a 10-minute session and the coachee spoke for 8 minutes.
Wow.
And I can't tell you how difficult that was for me.
Right. And it can almost feel like, oh, no, I didn't do anything in those 10 minutes, but active listening is
and actually the person hearing themselves say something, that's really powerful. So rather than hear someone else tell you something, or for them to hear themselves, it may be the first time they've ever uttered those words out loud, and that acceptance of, God, have I just said that?
Yeah,
I've
that's
just said
powerful.
it, so it's obviously important to me.
Yeah.
So I think listening is the one of the biggest skills to develop. So for me as an operator, I've very much had to slow down.
Because you always had something to say about
what
was going to be
directional.
changed. Yeah.
Let's do things. And actually nearly feel you're not doing your job properly unless you're busy.
Yeah.
Now that for me, that's totally on it. And I value thinking time. And I think the other value from a coaching perspective to the clients is, and I best describe it as a bit of a jigsaw. You're listening and you're piecing together really what the words mean.
They said this in our last session, and now there's what is being repeated, and
what connections are there between what's being said. So as an example, I did a coaching session with someone a few weeks ago, and they were very upset with themselves because they procrastinate too much. So tell me about you procrastinate. When did it happen? So you do lots of listening, asking very good quality questions without yes and no answers to explore. And actually what was underneath it was they struggled to make decisions because they didn't have any clarity of where they were going. When you don't know where you're going, and I liken it to going on holiday, you choose where you want to go.
How do you know what to pack?
You decide what to pack because you know where you're going. You decide what time to leave the house, what transport you need, and it determines the whole route of the journey and how you carry out and who with, and how much it's going to cost you, because you have clarity of the destination where you're going to, and that was the issue. They didn't have the clarity. So when they had choices to make, they didn't really know what choices to make because they weren't informed on where they were going.
Yeah.
And it's listening to all the breadth around that issue they may have, or that niggle, or the thing they want to talk about, for you to help them play back to, well, actually what I've heard is you've said this. Did I understand that correctly? Oh, yes, that's right. And then you just help people to put the jigsaw puzzle together as to what the issues are. And then the things you can start to work on and what's going to help them to overcome
whatever might be.
So it's great for
their
problem
block.
solving, and it's great for goal setting for people.
Yeah. Wow.
There's probably lots more, but they're the things that come to mind.
Yeah, that really stand out for you. So of course, as a coach now, you're using these coaching skills, but then all of your experience. So let's talk a little bit more about your experience. So you've been in and around pubs since you were very young.
So my parents came to England as obviously migrants, which in today, what's going on today, people forget that.
Yep.
And they recounted to me turning up to, they were both in their early teens, to get separately, they came separately to Birmingham. And then the lodgings would have a sticker on the door saying, no blacks, No Irish and no dogs.
Oh my
Imagine
goodness.
being on that list.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of it's just my mum's with us now. We lost my dad a few years back. But they met and worked their socks off. So they had 3 jobs each.
Wow.
And by within 2 years, my mum had 3 children. Literally 1 year after the other. And she was the business person in the relationship. And they decided they'd buy a really nice big Victorian house. They didn't have any, it came with no money. And they would have lodgings for the Irish people who couldn't get anywhere.
Who didn't have anywhere else to go.
Because it being turned away. So we had a fabulous 3-storey home overlooking a park in Small Heath in Birmingham. And of course it meant all the family could live there. And then sort of after those 9 years later I came along, so I was their 4th. So obviously 2 boys, 2 girls. They worked in pubs in the evening, and that was our holiday money. So every week they put their little wage packet in a box, and once a year, and one of the pub they worked at, the owner of the pub was my godparent. They went and got all of their money for the year, and we had a proper we went to Butlins. I mean, my peers didn't go to Butlins when I was very young.
Yeah.
But around the age of 2, they were talked into having their own pub.
Okay.
So they both got a pub together in Birmingham, and we as a family moved in, and they were wise enough to keep the house.
Wow.
So, very astute, but they worked their absolute socks off. So I lived in about 10 pubs until I was at the age of 21.
Wow.
But unfortunately at 6, my parents divorced. And it was the pub that contributed, the pub life and working life contributed towards that. But they were both very good independently. So they both had pubs. I then had 2 pubs to live in, not one. And it was our family unit was very different to my peer group. So we were Catholic, and my grandmother could find work, but my grandfather couldn't in Northern Ireland because he was Catholic, and it was all the Protestants that were employing people.
Yep.
So I had a grandmother who was the breadwinner. So that's what my mother was used to. So then my mother pursued a career in the pubs, and she moved pubs every 3 years after that.
Wow.
Every pub had food. She was ahead of her time, and it was her food catering.
Oh my goodness, wow.
So she was able to rent the kitchen from the company.
Yeah.
So I grew up with her moving pubs every 3 years, and bigger, better pubs, earning more money, making more bonus. By the 3rd year, they put her targets up so high she moved to the next one. And she was one of the first female licensees in Birmingham in the 70s.
Wow.
So that was my other role model as a woman. So that was where it started. So I just was used to working in the pub.
Yeah, that was your life. That was normal.
So I think I just fell into it. But I had decided I wanted to join the army and be a military policewoman. So at 17 and 3 months, I stayed on at school and hated it for my A-levels. Went off for the weekend, passed the initial exams and hated it. Hated people shouting at me, not being kind to someone who broke their ankle while we were there, and just realised it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And
At least you had that realisation early.
I did. And when I rang Mum at the railway station coming, I went, oh my God, it was dreadful. I'm not doing this. And she went, oh, thank God for that. And I said, did you not want me to do it? She went, oh no. She said, but you have to do your own thing and get it out of your system.
Yeah.
And then it was working for my mum, her area manager, who was very obviously forward thinking, and invited me to do relief.
Yeah.
So for me, opportunities arose. I was good at what I did, and people tapped me on the shoulder and said,
try this next.
Could you? Oh yeah, no problem. I'll have a go. I'll learn, what have you. And that is literally how, for probably the 15 years after that, my career went. I did what I did.
Yeah.
I loved it. So I did relief management, went into training. After 3 years, they said, we think you'd be a good ops manager. And because I'd worked fabulously with the operational team as a trainer, they took me in under their wing, looked after me. 3 years with them, then I went on to be a general manager. And then just kept doing other jobs. Could you do something in property? Yeah, I'll have a go. Could you do something from programme management in the centre? Because we can't get efficiency at that. Yeah, I'll have a go at that. And I did that until my early 30s then.
And that was to Director of Operations.
Yeah, 32.
Wow, and that was for Punch, is that right? Punch Taverns.
Yeah. And I spent my time at Allied Domec, and then Punch acquired Allied. Worked with them for a year in a property role, nationally heading up investments and helping bridge the Allied Domec, who were a bit upset that Punch had purchased and they wanted Whitbread to buy the business, not Punch. And then bridging the gap between them and the new owners. So again, I was already facilitating, not quite realising, keeping both parties happy.
Yeah.
How do I keep the spend in the business I love going, the investment for all our tenants and for our operators? What can I do to ensure they get the investment signed off that they need to progress the business and to keep growing? Because we've been on a massive growth curve and it was a fantastic business to be in. And how can I support our owners to be able to work together more cohesively with people who weren't really responding very well to being bought? My aim for both parties was to bring them together and keep the capex rolling and the estate, you know, so it would seem seamless from a tenant perspective that behind the scenes everything was perfect and everything was continuing as it was.
And you're there to help the negotiation between the two
broker
sides.
these relationships,
Yes,
basically.
brokering. Were there many women at your level then?
When I was a BDM in tenanted, there was only me. So I was the 10%, there was 10 of us and there was only me.
Okay.
When I moved then to more senior level, I worked for a woman in the north called Jeanette Hadgate, and I'm still in touch with her, which is lovely. So she was the only, there was 3 at the time, regional directors of the 3 parts of the business. There was 1 woman. So I went to work for her, and she had 1 operator in her team, and Jeanette and myself, and then there was a lady in property as well. But there still were a lot of senior women in the business, so we were still very much a minority sort of within that business. And at its best, when we had, Punch grew from 1,500 pubs to 3,000 to 7,500 at its biggest.
Wow.
And when I was the ops director, I had 500, pub estate of 500 pubs. Wow. £30 million profit was the contribution for that business, and of the 16 regions there were 3 women.
Okay. So
which
small,
was probably better than most companies.
Yeah.
Actually, and we looked after each other.
Yeah.
I was only talking to the third lady because Jeanette was one of them, and Sue Allen's still in the business now. And we said, actually, we really enjoyed working together.
Yeah, so you definitely formed close ties.
But there were only 3 of us, so
yeah,
so still a minority in the whole of the business.
Did you feel like a minority at the time, or no? You learned from your mom, who was a very hardworking woman, to just say, this is what I'm doing and I'm good at it, keep going. Did you feel that your gender held you back?
I never felt it held me back until I met my husband and fell in love and got married very quickly, which really shocked everybody. So I got married I took that on, I was 32, and I was about 34, 35 then when I got married. And that shocked everybody when I turned up to work with an engagement ring on. Where did he come from? We didn't know you had a chap.
Well, what does it matter? Why is it any of their business?
And then the next 4 years were probably the most disruptive of roller coasters that I've ever had, because we met in the January, got married in the August. So that was, everyone's going, oh my God, where's he come from? Funny, we went to school together.
Oh, okay. Had you known each other back then? Or?
We did.
Yeah.
He never asked me out. He was 2 years older than me. I used to walk to the post office and he never asked me out.
And he came back.
And this
into your
time
life.
I thought, she's not getting away this time. I better ask her out this time. So we married in the August, but by the following January we had our first child.
Wow.
And the next few years were, from a career perspective, I stayed in the longest role I ever had was 6 years doing that role as ops director, because we got married. I lost my father just after I had my first child, and he was very integral to the family. And so we lost him in the March, and then in December I lost the baby.
Oh my goodness.
And 12 months later I had another one. So in 4 years I fell in love, got married, had 2 children, lost my father, and lost a child.
Wow.
So that period, and when I do talk to the women, having experienced the roller coaster of that is very helpful. Even now I go, God, did that? And it was really only after helping other women that I reflected on that period of actually what really happened. Because when you're in it, you're just fighting to survive.
Yeah.
Fortunately, most of it was happy and it was very positive. But it did change my leadership style and how I looked at my role at work.
Yeah, I think.
And the importance of work versus home and family.
Yeah, we can so often think of career as a separate item, and it's really not the case. It's so interwoven into all aspects of our lives.
And one of my advices now to businesses and to younger women coming through is it's never too early to start talking about that. The planning, what your future looks like, how you put provision in to make it as easy as possible, both for the business and also for yourself.
For you to take time out to have a
and
family
have people
and then
to
come
talk
back.
to about it. It's quite a challenging sort of period, really. So.
Yeah.
So I draw a lot from that in terms of working with the women that I'm working with now.
And was it a challenge to then come back to work after having your children?
It wasn't so much the being at work, it was often the out of hours things that you had to console yourself with. How do I make all that work? I'd really like to be at home for bedtime.
Yeah.
And I think it was around that aspect, and interestingly then, my team are a similar age to me. So I think it was much more helpful to them because they were getting married and having children, and they had a much more empathetic me than they probably would have had before I had those personal experiences.
Yeah.
To look after them and make sure, that they were okay, and their family unit was okay, and that it was all right for it to be as equally important as work.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, they loved work all the more.
They could bring their whole selves to work.
Their whole selves to
Yeah.
work. So, but it was juggling the time was difficult. I wanted to do a 4-day week, and my husband did. In his role, he got his 4-day week, and I could have had my 4-day week if I was on the phone on the 5th day. And I went, well, I don't really work, does it? Because I've lost 20% of my salary. Why would I be answering the phone on the 5th day? So that made me again look at things differently, and I made it work. So I might have gone home earlier in the afternoon and gone back out again in the evening. And I think people miss in the sector, you can do that.
Yeah, there can be some flexibility.
We're 7 days a week, we're open not like we used to close at 2:30 and open again at 5:30, when I was sort of first going into pubs. Actually, we can be flexible. I lived 15 minutes from the office, and that made a massive difference. So I was always very visible from a career perspective. And but after I had my third child, Emily, I decided that 6 years doing that role was enough. I'd never done a job for more than 3. I needed to do something different. And I went back to work, and they were very good. All through those traumas, they were fantastic at Punch as well. Very, very good to me. I went back to do a role that was office-based.
Okay.
On a part-time basis.
To then have that flexibility.
Have the flexibility of going into work, sort of for 9 and leaving at 3:30 and what have you. And I did that for a couple of years too.
Yeah, so clearly your career experience and personal experience are all super important to the work that you're doing now. Additionally, you've also done a lot of research into women in hospitality and sort of in senior level roles. Can you talk a little bit about some of the research that you've done and what your findings are on what are holding women back?
So I was a bit perplexed because I hadn't faced some of the challenges women were telling me they were facing, and I didn't really understand all of them. And I thought, well, why is that then? I'm a woman and I've come through. But what I realised was, having had the positive women around me and the strong women, I was very confident, and I had lots of mentors and sponsors along the way that were fantastic. They helped my career, so I didn't do it on my own. And they were very forward thinking, so they were very helpful. So I decided I didn't know enough. And if I was really to make a difference and help women, I needed to do a little bit more exploratory work. And again, being very much supported by, interestingly, males. And I approached Nick Bish who runs the Operations Manager of the Year Awards.
Okay.
And I said, I noticed you've got a photograph of 16 finalists and there's 2 women. I've got a bit of a problem with this. What's going on?
How do we get that to 8? Exactly.
And he was really interested. So I shared a little bit of research I did with him. Because what I found was, over a 7 or 8 year period, 1 in 5 finalists were women. But women were walking away with half of the awards. So they were outperforming in terms of only 2 out of 16 they were winning all these awards. And then on a desktop exercise on LinkedIn, I then looked at what happened to the winners. 60% of the men enjoyed a promotion or advancement, and only 25% of the women.
Oh, interesting.
So they'd overperformed.
Yep.
Underrepresented, overperformed, but we're not getting
hadn't
progression.
got that next step up.
And Nick was very supportive. He went, well, I thought I sensed this, but I didn't know it for a fact. I'm really glad you brought this to my attention. Come and join us on our masterclass, leadership masterclass. Come and talk to the group. And we did, and from that group we got the sponsorship of Game Shift, who are a leadership consultant, who said, we're really interested too. we'll work with you on some research. So they did, and we took it at risk to go off and do this on our own. And then I was very grateful to Kate Nichols from UK Hospitality, who then said, actually, Jackie, I'm really interested if you'd like some sponsorship to do the research.
Wow, so you've got a great group of people behind you.
Fantastic people that are all interested. So we interviewed 32 men and women from across the sector, all the high flyers mainly coming out of the Ops Awards. So these are younger, people coming through.
Up and coming in their roles.
And then we also looked at some senior and interviewed some senior women who progressed too, to get a nice balance. So we came out with 7 themes that we think are holding women back. Again, from males and females in terms of observations. And they're around the boys' club. There's definitely a club out there.
Yeah.
And tribes of people who don't want others involved. Also, there's lots of stereotyping of women, making assumptions. And also from growing up. One of the ladies said, oh, my mum asked me why I wanted to go to university.
Wow.
So it happened in the home as well as sort of in the workplace as well, in terms of
limiting our aims,
undermining and undervaluing. So again, women are much quieter and their contribution is quieter, but yet they're working really hard underneath to make things happen. And undermined by things like meetings, being spoken over, happens a lot. And they're little things, but they all add up to having a sort of a huge impact. Women can silence themselves through a lack of confidence and putting other people first. So there's a big area around women themselves not elevating themselves too. Family, the logistics, and a fabulous partner is really important. So my husband and I share the responsibility at home and with our children. I couldn't have had the success without him doing that. And my mum used to fly over from Ireland every week on a Monday night and fly back on a Friday and look after my children in the week. So again, without him sharing the responsibility and without that family provision, it would have been much more difficult for me to carry on in terms of my career. Macho leadership, again, dominant, direct leadership that women don't like and find very difficult to overcome, and not very welcoming of it and inviting for, And it turned out not just women, it's a class thing as well. Some of the men were saying, well, because of my accent and my education, I don't feel like I got an opportunity. And of course, colour. It's hard being a woman, and it's harder even being a woman of colour, and particularly for our sector. So there's a lot of work going on in terms of that at the moment. Boards were very good at signing up to diversity charters and being on LinkedIn and social media. And then when I spoke to the individuals in the businesses, they had no idea what was going on. Didn't even know they'd signed up to these charters. So not walking the talk. And the 7th barrier that we overcome, that we noticed, was believing in the business case. That there is a really robust business case to support having more diversity. It's not just about women, it's other ethnic sort of or other minorities that add value to businesses. And Sodexo did some fabulous research that showed from sustainability and growth, like for like and new businesses, where they had a more balanced workforce, their performance was better.
Wow.
And there's a whole heap of information around that.
Things that show that.
Research was really interesting. So we pulled out 7 things which were the barriers, and then we started to look at, okay, so what do we do next? So what are the things that will make a difference, both for women and other minority groups as well, and those businesses? So the first thing we came up with was silence endorses the status quo. So I keep seeing, for example, speaking events with only men that I've been to. Of course, now I'm not very silent about that, but I like to do it in a way that it's not hanging anybody out to dry, and it's a private conversation to go, did you realise? Because generally it is quite unintended, but again, that's not a good enough excuse. We need to have it on the agenda.
Yeah,
so
by
the
staying
first
silent,
point
it allows it to continue.
Is accepting there's a problem. And if we can get people to really openly accept there is an issue, and conversely an opportunity, you won't get the breakthrough until there's an acceptance. And then people willing to understand. And again, I think that's what I suffered. I didn't have some of the issues the other women had that I was talking to. And because I'd not experienced it, I didn't realise it was an issue.
You needed someone else to make you aware.
Make me aware.
As you were doing for some of these conversations.
To try and understand what it was. So it's that unconscious bias they talk about. But for me, it's unintentional. So that was the first thing. People have to speak out, and the industry bodies play a big part in that. So even one event where there were female speakers, when it was produced who was speaking, there were no photographs of the women, and there were only men. List of women's names, no photographs.
So again, unequal in another aspect of it.
Unintended.
Yep.
But again, a bias towards males as opposed to really replicating what was happening at that event and who was attending. So seeking out the unintended sort of bias is the second sort of aspect. And boards need to look in the mirror. They lead these businesses. It is their behaviours that are reinforcing this. And they've got to be willing to be accepting and reflect and look at themselves and seek the feedback. Ask people and really listen to what's going on in their business. So that was sort of the second one. The third aspect of what we can do to overcome is showing people the vision of what's possible. If you can't see me, you can't be me. I was very lucky. I had a grandmother and a mother that I went, yeah, everything's possible.
Yeah.
No one's ever going to tell me it's not possible. But for some people, they don't have that. And that's another cultural aspect as well, that, you know, oh yeah, be quiet, don't say anything, don't stand out, just be happy with your lot. The fourth one is levelling the playing field. Is really looking for, it may be unintended, and we are different, whatever way you shape, men and women on a whole are different, and we have different behaviours, and different leaders have different styles and behaviours. So it's identifying the gaps and really filling those. So coaching and mentoring is hugely impactful for women, but also understanding the skill sets required. You know, how do you gain your confidence at a board meeting? How do you deal with it when someone talks over you or doesn't invite you to speak? And giving them the skills around how they may do that, but be welcome to do it, as opposed to getting people's backs up. And being a dominant woman. So lots of feedback about dominant women.
You don't want to be too present.
Actually, people don't like them.
Yeah.
Very much with the feedback.
Yeah.
Didn't learn much from that woman. She was really overbearing. And we're treated differently. The language used to describe women, we saw it with Theresa May.
Yep. And of course with Hillary Clinton as well.
Oh, yeah. So levelling the playing field and giving them the skills required and the frameworks to be able to advance. Stop treating family as an unexpected noise. Lots of people have families, we sort of just have to get over it. We need to be flexible and we need to do things differently and be welcoming, genuinely welcoming of that. The newer, smaller pub companies coming through the system are much better at that.
It's harder for the bigger ones to change. Yeah.
And building new. It's harder when you've got a ship that's already moving to just slightly take it off course.
Yeah.
Valuing softer leadership skills. A lot of women said, actually, we don't like the look of being on the board. They're not very nice to each other. They're very dominant.
Yeah, that is
not
interesting.
very collaborative. It's not very supportive.
Is that a place for me? Is that a place I want to be
Do
in?
I actually want to be there?
Yeah.
So my point is, well, but you could change it.
Exactly. The only way it's going to change is if you get in there and make that effort.
And we make the effort to go on there and be confident enough to make the changes. And then the last one is learning as you go. You know, so many companies have got initiatives. We don't want initiatives. It is literally conversations happening at a time, opportunities happening at a time. Some won't work and some will. Learn how you go, talk to people, get feedback, have a go at doing things that are a little bit different. And they were the 7 sort of success factors that we've evidenced from the research.
Yeah,
so
that's brilliant. So where can we find more when it comes out?
the launch is the 24th of February, and then post that the report will be available. So there'll be a series of podcasts and there'll be probably a series of blogs coming out once it's launched to try and share it wider with everybody in terms of the successes. Or of course they can contact me on LinkedIn, and then we've got a few video snippets that we're going to share as well, and we'll push those out on LinkedIn too.
Perfect. All right, well, in the interest of time, I'll ask you my last question that I always ask. What do you enjoy most about being a part of the beer and pub industry?
When I left it for a few years, I realised I really did miss the social aspect of it. It is a people business, and I think that's what I missed the most, is that it is a people business, and what a great job going out into pubs all day. I mean, does the job get any better than that?
Yeah, right. Being around great people, great beers, and of course there's so many family memories for you in the space as well.
Yeah. So I'm pub sort of through and through. Unfortunately, with the work I'm doing now, I'm still able to keep my arm in and go to lots of pub events and represent the sector really now for me, which, you know, I'm really proud of being able to do that. So I think it was the whole social, and it's a community. It's in, you know, we've lost so many pubs. and the importance of those in the community for people who are on their own, who need friendships, and that's what we loved at our pub. We used to have people come and have Christmas dinner with us because you're in the community and you knew them. So I love the pubs where, although they're bigger and there's food, they remember people and they remember the customers who are coming in. They're my favourite pubs to go to.
Yeah. And you still get to spend plenty of time in them, as you said, so that's great. Well, thank you very much. I can't wait to share your research with everyone. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much for having me. And I hope it's been useful. I hope someone out there hears something in there that goes, actually, yes, I can.
Yeah.
Whoever that is, wherever that is. So
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time too.
Thank you. Thanks again for your time, Jackie, and for all of your insight. To find out more about Jackie's research, visit beerwithnat.com/podcast and you'll find a link to her work. Come back next week to hear from Alex White, brewer at London Fields Brewery. Chat soon.